Hey guys, welcome to Fun and Gun. Got a gun that's pretty special here to me today. This is actually the gun that I've had in my collection the longest. It's not the first gun I've owned, but this is the first gun I ever bought new, and also the first gun I ever put in layaway. And I've actually owned this gun for 15 years, and that is half my life because I am 30 years old. So figured it was probably a pretty cool video to make, to go ahead and kind of talk about what I've learned about this gun and owning it for literally half my life now, and just kind of different things about it and some issues I've had with it over the years and just some cool things about it, I guess, as well. So let's go ahead and start off by showing you here that this gun is unloaded. So it is safe. And we'll go ahead and kind of talk about a few different ways I've had this gun set up over the years, or just kind of how it is now, and I'll insert some pictures as I'm talking about it of what it looked like over the different generations of the ways different variations of the way I've had this gun set up over the years, because when you have something that long, it does end up changing. And I kind of think I got it in the configuration it's going to stay in from now on. There might be a few things I'll change. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we're going to start off here at the back side of the gun. This gun currently has a Hogue stock on it and a Hogue grip. Really like the Hogue stuff. This stock works well on this gun because it has a little bit of rubber in there, and it goes ahead and makes it fit nice and snug on the buffer tube extension here that's made into your lower. Now you do lose the use of your storage in the back side of your buff tube extension there. I guess you can still use it, you just have to take the stock off if you wanted to cram some extra rounds down in there to use this as a survival gun. That is a possibility. You can store stuff in these grips, not watertight, but there is an option there. Or not the grip, the buffer tube. Okay, so moving on towards the middle of the gun here, this gun does have a Plinker tactical extended old school style charging handle, ambi style that is. You can grab it from that side, you can grab it with that. The way I usually do it's like that right there. You can kind of just grab it however you want to. Not the most practical thing, but at the time this was the only option you had if you wanted to get an extended charging handle. So that's been on there, hadn't had any issues with it marring up the plastic. Figured that could be a problem over time, but hasn't hurt the gun. Gun seems to be made out of good plastic. Another thing I did to it here is not really just a hardcore modification, it's just something I wanted to try at one point, and I went ahead and painted the fire red and the safety white on both sides. It's just kind of a cool thing to mess with back in the day. Then this gun also has captured trigger screws here, and the reason behind that is because at one point I took this apart and apparently I didn't put it back together exactly right. One of the springs wasn't sitting on the pin, it started walking out, so I figured anti-walk pins, why not? And now while we're talking about those pins, this is something I've learned is if you don't know, the 1522 frame or lower here is a little thicker than a standard mil-spec AR lower. So when you go to get pins to go through it, any kind of pins here, you're gonna have to have 1522 specific ones or reuse the factory ones because they're gonna need to be a little bit longer. So that is something. And while we're speaking of that as well, that goes for the safeties as well. So that's why mine still has a factory safety on it, because you're kind of limited on options if you want it to properly fit the gun. So that's why you don't see a lot of people putting binary triggers in these. I'm sure you can make it work, but that's not something that's going to be easily to do with the way the safety's set up in this gun. Not exactly sure about the takedown pins. I will say these pins are a little bit longer than some of the AR ones I messed with, but the fact that this actually divots in pretty good there, you could probably get away with putting different pins if you really just wanted to change the pins for some reason. Let's see here. Another thing that's specific to the 1522 is I have seen people try to use the regular bad lever on this gun, and it kind of works and it kind of doesn't, because it will run into the frame in a bad spot. It makes it harder for it to work, and it's also heavier. And that getting into that is one thing I did do is I clipped the spring, one coil off the bottom of the spring on the actual bolt catch there, and that allows for this to all function properly and lock open with the extra weight of the bad lever style deal here going on. So really the difference in this is versus a regular bad lever is it weighs less, and you got a little bit more length right here where to get underneath the receiver, because not only is this receiver thicker in width dimension, it is also a little bit taller as well. So that allows for the bad lever to clear. A few things that are actually interchangeable with the regular AR would be the stock, the grip. Those are factory or just standard AR parts. The magazine assembly, release assembly that is. I do have an extended magazine release on this. It's all just standard AR-15 parts. So that is interchangeable. Let's see here. One of the issues that I've seen with these guns over the years, and I've only had it happen to me once, and that was after shooting thousands of rounds through this particular gun, is the fact that I got an added battery discharge and it blew the extractor assembly out of the gun. And now, why I say that's an issue, yeah, like I said, I put thousands of rounds through it, and from what Smith & Wesson told me, they believe that the recoil spring was wore out, and we'll get more into that when I'll pop the gun open to show you the recoil spring that's now in it. It's got the Gen 2 in it, signaled by, or which shows that, or the blue, which is blue, which shows that it is the Gen 2. We'll get to that one in a second when we get into it. But the reason I consider this a problem is because I've had it happen once. I've seen 2 other people have it happen at competition with the rifle variation of the gun. And one of my buddies has the newer style of the pistol with the brace on it, not the old one without the extension at all. Would like to track one of those down. I think it's pretty cool. Came out around the time this gun did. And while we're talking about what time this gun came out, this gun's actually made on August 27th, 2009. And I bought it basically the month after it came out. So right around the time this video is coming out is me owning this gun for 15 years. So I've had this gun for a very long time, like I mentioned earlier. But we're getting into the pistol variation of it. And my buddy actually has replaced it. Let's see, the factory one blew out within about 500 rounds. Smith & Wesson sent him another factory one, and then it blew out within another 500, 600, maybe 1,000 rounds. Put an aftermarket with it and one in it. And I believe he blew one aftermarket one out, and then he put another aftermarket in it, and that's the one that's currently in it now. And we'll get into more of that when we go ahead. Let me go ahead and pop the bolt out of this, and I'll kind of go over why I think that happens more with the pistol variation of the gun. And we'll get into what Smith & Wesson told me that caused it to happen on mine while we're thinking about it here. And like I said, this has the blue spring in it, which is a Gen 2 spring. And what Smith & Wesson told me is they believe that the recoil spring was wore out on my gun after thousands of rounds, and that is why they think that the gun had an added battery and blew the extractor out. Now, I'm not going to say that that's exactly what caused it, but it has been running perfectly fine with the new spring in it. And I will say, getting the new spring from Smith & Wesson was a bit of a pain. It took a few months to actually get one of them from them, and I had to buy this. So at the time of buying this, I went ahead and bought a second one, so I have a spare one just in case for later on. But that is the spring that comes on the newer versions of the guns. I'm not exactly sure what's different about it. I don't know if it's a different spring rate or what, but it is blue now. The one that was on this gun for years was just a plain silver spring. Now, what I was thinking that probably is causing some of the issues with the extractor to blow out of the pistol variation of this gun is the fact that the bolt is significantly lighter than the one on the rifle variation. And that's because it has a lot of weight milled out of it. I don't have one here to show you, but I have seen the one of my buddies, and it's got a lot of weight scalloped out of it. And that is because the barrel's not as long on it. It needs the extra, or the less weight to go ahead and get enough energy to cycle the bolt. And I'm wondering if something to do with the way that's timed with the lighter bolt has something to do with the extractor getting blown out of it. And that is a possibility, I guess. But mine has an extended extractor in it now, which is another good thing because these guns do not like to extract a live round. So if you're shooting competition with it specifically and you get to the end of the stage and you need to show the guns clear, the extractor is going to help with that. Now, another thing, now this is kind of this 22 thing in general, is you want to make sure you keep the channel right, or the little pocket that the case is going to sit down into on the breech face right here cleaned out. And that's going to help you with two things. And number one, it's going to help with extraction because it's going to allow for the case to be where it needs to be for the extractor to get over it. But it's also going to help with light primer strike issues, because if you get a bunch of crud build up around the outside of that ring, it's going to push the rim of the cartridge away from your firing pin, and that way you're going to lead to some light primer strike issues. So if you pick one of these guns up and you're getting light primer issues and you're not using Winchester ammo, Winchester sucks, only have 22 ammo, so I put that out there. But yeah, go ahead and scrape that clean right there. That just means that your firing pin's getting pushed away, because I did actually put a extended firing pin into this gun for a short period of time. Probably put about 500 rounds through it. Then I realized what it was doing to my bolts, so I took it back out. And I believe that was the Tandem Cross brand. Of course, it makes one as well. I'll try to insert a picture on here if I can find the one on my phone. But essentially, your firing pin right here from the factory when the hammer hits it, it will push it in, but it will not go beyond flush with the backside of your bolt face here, or the backside of the bolt. And that means that the hammer is going to be resting on the actual firing pin, putting all the energy into the case to ignite it. And when you put the extended one in there, at least with the tandem cross one, it allows the firing pin to go beyond flush with the backside of your bolt right here. And as you can see there in the picture, if I found it on my phone there is an indentation of the hammer where it is smacking the backside of the bolt, and I didn't like that, so I put the factory one back in it, and it has been working just fine as long as like I said, keep that clean. So kind of disappointed in that. Went ahead and bought it and didn't get to use it very long. So another thing is these guns, I will say, it is a little dirty right there from my shot the other day, but if I had a rag right here, you can literally just essentially just wipe that off, because these bolts, I'm pretty sure they're nickel boron coated. I don't know if Smith & Wesson advertises it, but these bolts essentially just wipe clean extremely easily, which is very nice. And as you can see there, they have a very nice machine mark. There's hardly no machine marks on them. So I think that helps that a little bit as well. So bolts on these guns are made really well. This gun is still smooth as glass, even with that many rounds through it. I'm not exactly sure how many rounds I put through this gun. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 or maybe even 40,000 rounds. I've shot this gun a lot. Now I kind of slowed down in the last so many years because I have picked up quite a few other different semi-automatic 22s that I like playing with as well. And for many years, this was the 22 rifle that I had, and I shot it a lot. But it's a few things I figured I'd cover that issues-wise with this particular platform that I've seen over the years. And as you can see there is a metal charging handle, the Plinker Tactical that I mentioned a second ago. So let's go ahead and drop this back into the gun. Or actually, I'll take that back. I'm just gonna go ahead and split the gun in half so it makes it easier to show you how the front side of this is set up. Well, the lower half of this is set up, and we'll get into the upper in a second. So let me move the bolt assembly out of the way. We'll talk a little bit more about the lower here. And as you can see, it is not exactly the same as a regular AR-15 in a lot of dimensions, and that is because Smith & Wesson specifically done it that way to keep someone from trying to put a 5.56 or equivalent upper onto this lower and breaking it or blowing it up. So that is, everything on this has dimensionally changed. The pins are in different places where that does not work. But as you can see there, that is how the bad lever functions. And this gun does have the factory trigger in it still. And I will talk about something else on the newer generations of guns they have changed, and that is this is a trigger out of one of them. As you can see there, it's got more of a MIM style hammer. It's been a little bit pocketed out for lightning. It's got different springs on it. These triggers are actually quite a bit lighter than the one that came on this gun from the factory. This is more of just a standard mil spec, which that is too, but this one just has standard springs in it and everything. It's quite a bit heavier. So I'll probably end up putting this hammer and spring assembly or trigger assembly in it at some point. This actually came out of my buddy's newer 1522, and we'll get into that in just a second why I have that. But really the only modifications I've done to this trigger is I did polish your hammer and your sear and all your points of contact in there for the trigger to be smoother. And it does have what they call the 60-cent trigger job done to it, which is a set screw above the grip screw right here where you can adjust it to have little to no pre-travel. And that is what you see there. Just got a little bit of pre-travel. You want to leave a little bit for safety reasons, but makes this trigger significantly better. Doesn't cost you a whole lot. And the reason I never bothered to change the trigger in this is because I heard horror stories over the years of people putting different style triggers in these, which they will interchange with standard ARs. But if you do not get a trigger that has a hard enough fall to the hammer, it will not set off the 22 cartridge, which is crazy to think that this needs more energy than quite a few different 5.56 and multiple different centerfire cartridges, but that is the case for some reason. So that's one of the reasons I've stuck with the factory trigger over the years, because it works fine the way it is. Just took a little bit of slop out of it and the grit out of it. But like I mentioned, the reason I have this trigger is because a trigger that I know works well in these guns is the Hyperfire, either the Eclipse or the Competition, same trigger. This one of them has the nickel boron coating on it, just slicking it up, which is the Eclipse version. I've seen one of my buddies shoot a 1522 with that trigger in competition a lot, and that's why my other buddy ended up getting one, and that's where this trigger come from. I actually installed the Hyperfire into it, and he let me have the old one because I'm going to eventually put it in this just to kind of give it a little bit better trigger. So something such as a Hyperfire works in it. There is a few other ones that you can get. I got a buddy that's got a Timney that's had pretty good luck out of it, setting off quite a bit of different stuff. So it is possible to use different triggers. You just got to be careful and mindful of which ones you put in it, because if you get something really light, it may not set off the 22 cartridge is 100% reliable. So that kind of covers a little bit of everything you need to know about the lower half of the gun here. So let's go ahead and we'll move to the upper half of the gun. We'll get into a few other issues I've ran into over the years and just a few things that I've done to the particular upper half. It currently has a Hollison 510C, and if you've paid attention to the pictures I was inserting of me different variations I've had this gun set up in, you would have seen that it's had quite a few different red dots on it. It started off life with a old Vortex red dot on it. Went to a Vortex set with a magnifier on it that I ended up getting at a good deal. Ended up trading that for a Kel-Tec CP33. So this gun didn't have a red dot on it for a little while again, and ended up picking up a 510C to go on it on Black Friday last year. And that's what's going to stay on this gun for the rest of the time I own it, more than likely, unless I have kicked around the idea of putting a low magnification, like tactical style scope on it, just kind of change it up and give it a little bit more range or magnification. And we'll go over ahead and move to the front. This is one of the original guns. Like I said, I picked this up when they first came out, so it still had the quad rail on it. And it actually did not come with a factory threaded barrel, and I don't believe it was an option. And that gets into one of the other issues I had, and that was the fact that I shot the gun for years and finally got to the point where I couldn't keep it sighted in. So I assumed that apparently I had, managed to shoot the sight or the barrel out. It was just wore out, wouldn't hit anything, would not stay sighted in for nothing. So I wanted a threaded barrel anyways to go with my suppressor. So I picked up a new barrel, and I ended up going with the Firearms barrel, which gets you a whole new extractor and everything. Or not extractor, ejector. So it's a full assembly. This barrel has been just as reliable as the factory barrel, and it's actually a little bit more accurate. If you watch the 22 Plinkster video he just released here not too long ago, he talks about the Firearms barrel being quite a bit more accurate, and it is also threaded, so I put my suppressor on it. But issue I had is it wasn't the barrel was wore out, it was the fact that the barrel was actually loose, and that was because this nut was loosening up under here that holds the whole assembly together, and you could jiggle the barrel, and that's why it would not stay sighted in. So that was the biggest issue I had with the gun to start with, was the fact that I thought I'd burned or shot the barrel out. So it's not really an issue. It's just you got to be mindful of it. If you start getting to the point where you can't get decent accuracy out of the gun, you want to make sure that that nut hadn't loosened up on you. You can kind of check that by grabbing the handguard and just jiggling the barrel. And you do have to have a special tool for this to tighten this up. Let's see if I don't have it relatively available to show you here. Yep, right there it is. Right there's the tool you got to have, and it's really just a couple of little nubs on the end of a pipe, and it has a place where you can grab onto it with the wrench, tighten it up. You could probably make one of these pretty easy if you don't want to spend however much one of these is, but if you get this barrel that comes with it, and it goes down in there and allows you to tighten that up, take it on and off. But I will say, even the fact that I didn't need the barrel, it was well worth it, because it significantly dropped the weight on this gun by making it carbon fiber like that. So that's pretty cool. And if you're letting if you're going to use this gun as kind of a trainer for your kids, that's definitely going to be something, because this gun's already light as it is, but you put that in there and it's just pretty crazy how light that is. And especially if you have one of the versions with the M-lock rail on it, it's going to be even lighter than the one with the quad rail here. And I kind of just have some few different things on the quad rail here. I just put the green ladder rails on there to kind of tie in with the Hogue stuff on the back. And it's got one of my favorite forward grip systems here, which is a, who makes this? This is a Fab Defense PTK with a little thumb ledge right there. And that thing, in my opinion, for a quad rail setup is extremely comfortable. I believe they make this for M-lock now too, but really like that system. And I believe I probably picked up the Airsoft variation of it because it's a little cheaper feeling, I feel like, than the real one was, and I only paid like $10 for it versus like 40 for the set. So still gets the job done, significantly cheaper. For 22, gonna do the job just fine. So that's kind of the gun. Now let's get into the biggest issue I have with the gun. Is something that I'm surprised that Smith & Wesson hasn't bothered to fix over the years, and my guess is because that just lets them sell more magazines, and that is the magazine feed lips. And this is a magazine that has an extension on it and an aftermarket follower in it. If you're interested in checking out this magazine, I am going to release a video going over 1522 magazines that they've made over the years and just different stuff that you can do to them to get more rounds in them. And I'll talk about this issue in that video as well, but it's meant to be a separate video. But the issue is as you can see here, this round has a ton of rounds through it, and you can just stand that round up in the top of it, and there's nothing there to keep it from popping up, and that is because the feed lips on these magazines wear out extremely fast. In my opinion, you get 200 or 300 rounds out of the newer magazines, and that feed lip seems to be wore slap out. Now, they will still feed, but you do get more reliability issues with them. So let's bring in one here that's brand new, and as you can see, that round sits at a different angle, and I cannot push it up and pop it out anymore. I have to pull it out through the front. So that is the reason why when I find these magazines at a deal, I pick them up and I stow them away. That way when I wear out the ones I've got and I want to have some for competition use, I go ahead and rely on those, and the other ones just get put to plinking duty. Speaking of magazines that are old, now this magazine, you can see that it's not as easy to stand up the round as this one. It does do it, but this is the original magazine that came with the gun 15 years ago. It is painted green to match the theme of the gun being green. But this magazine still feeds just fine. I don't use it in competition because of the fact that it's starting to wear out, but that is something that you can run into, feeding issues. And now we'll get into a few more issues that I have found with these magazines. And this one being a brand new magazine, essentially, this magazine probably has maybe 50 to 100 rounds through it, if that, because of how many issues he had buying this magazine brand new. And this was a magazine I actually, one of my buddies just gave to me because he didn't feel like messing with it. But the problem I've noticed with these magazines here lately, and this is not the only one I've seen do this, I've seen a buddy pick up a couple of the black ones do the same thing, and it is in this area right here. And that's when you pull the follower down, you can let it go and it just stays right there. And that's because the actual pull tab is dragging on the channel here. And what causes that is improperly putting the magazines together, just improper molding, I guess. But how I fixed this particular magazine was just something I was messing with, and I'm not gonna say this works with all of them, but for this one it did. I pinched this particular part of the magazine in a vise lightly, and that opened up the back strap right here. And then I took a small zip tie, laid it down into the back of it, super glued it in, let it dry, and then trimmed it flush. Not beautiful, but that did actually force this part of the magazine to go in, and it is just as smooth as it should be from the factory. So that is an issue that I have seen here lately, is these magazines coming straight out of the Smith & Wesson factory are binding right here. Now I'm sure you could possibly fix that if you want to take that button out and not have it, but you could still possibly get magazine round stacking issues with the magazine not being properly inspect. So that's one thing. Another thing I have a magazine that's mine as well that I hadn't been able to fix because I can't get it to stay glued because it puts a lot of stress on you, put it around right there, but it is cracked right here. And I've heard from other people that is an issue. So these magazines are kind of a blessing and a curse to the gun. The fact that they're easy to load, they run very well, they're reliable until that part wears out is a good thing. But come on, Smith & Wesson, these magazines have been out for 15 years. I believe it's time for a generation 2. And you're gonna take a book out of the, the Tippmann book, and I want you to make this part either replaceable or make it out of metal, or just make the magazines out of better plastic in general, because that's kind of ridiculous in my opinion that you can't get more than probably 300 to 400 rounds around in there, and that part right there is basically just gone. It's kind of annoying. So really that's about the biggest issue I've had with the gun. Now we'll go ahead and give you a few things about the magazines in this video. Like I said, I'm gonna make a full video on the magazines, but you probably noticed that this magazine has a blue follower in it. This one has an orange one. All your 25 round factory magazines are gonna have the orange follower. The blue follower indicates that this is a 10 rounder, and also the fact that, as you can see it right there, it says 10 rounder on it. And this is kind of a tip that I don't really think is the best idea to give away, because it's gonna make it harder to do this now if a lot of people see this, but you can pick these magazines up, usually quite a bit cheaper in my experience, at least in my area, because everybody wants the 25s. Now, if you're in a 10 round only state, not gonna do you much good, but these magazines are the exact same magazine body as the 25 rounder. It just says 10 rounder on it. Got a blue follower, Does not come with a magazine button. I actually got that button from my buddy here that put the extensions on his because you can no longer use the button. So that's where I got the button at. But this magazine is no longer a 10-round magazine, as you can see here. Follower goes all the way to the bottom. And I actually picked up 3 of these brand new at an auction because nobody wanted them for $10 a piece. So I got them extremely cheap, brand new, and took a flathead screwdriver, and there is a pin that usually sits about right here in the mag body. Run it up from the bottom after you disassemble the magazine, smack it a few good times, and that little stub's gonna fall out, and you have yourself a perfectly good 25-round magazine at a good deal. Now they do also make these in a regular 10-round. I have one of those just for sighting in purposes, and it's just 'cause it looks cool in my miniature CMMG that I have a better mag adapter so it runs with these magazines. But as you can see there, full-size magazine. And I'll go ahead and cover one more magazine in this video, and I'll leave the rest of the information, such as the information about the extension here and everything, in the other video. But this is another good magazine. If you can find these, you can pick them up cheap sometimes, depending on if they know what they got or not. But these are old Plinker Tactical 35-round magazines. I have collected up a bunch of these once I found out they worked and they quit making them. So every time I find them cheap, I buy them. So I've got something like 8 or 9, maybe 10 of them now, and I figured once I wear one out, I'll just set it to the side. So I should have a lifetime supply of these magazines, I guess, at this point. But they do feed quite well, and they are a little bit larger, obviously, than the 25-round magazine, but you're getting another 10 rounds. So if you want to get a little bit more information on these magazines and everything, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I will be posting the video on that here shortly, within the next few days probably. But really, I just figured that I've had this gun for years. I've had pretty good luck out of it. So I figured I'd go ahead and share a little bit of information I've found out about these guns, owning them for this amount of time. Kind of give you a place to kind of find all the information from one source that somebody has quite a bit of experience with it. And that's kind of what I figured I'd do with this video, and kind of just the fact that I've had this gun for this long, I figured it'd be kind of just a cool video to make on top of that. So that's really all I had for you today. And if you're interested in the other video, just stay tuned. Okay, if you made it this far, I just want to say thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. If you're looking for more Fun and Gun right now, you can click one of the 2 recommended videos there. If you're looking for more Fun and Gun later, you can go ahead and click that there subscribe button. I sure would appreciate it. And if you're finding me from Facebook, go ahead and click that open app button at the top to make all that a lot easier. And I'll see you next time.